Of the Super Limit Break podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Logan, and I am joined, as always, by my friend Shaun. How's it going, Shaun?
Pretty damn good. Great day to be alive.
Was that like a period between each word there for like added emphasis or? Like,
yes.
Okay.
Pretty damn good.
I wanted to make sure I was picking up on that properly, like hashtag pretty damn good type of thing.
Oh my God!
Are we going that far? Or is that too
please.
much?
Let me trend on Twitter. I deserve it, people.
This isn't about Twitter. This is real life, motherfucker.
Oh,
this is like verbal hashtagging.
Hashtag RL. Something.
Think about a future. Imagine a future, if you will, where we live in such a world augmented by augmented reality. I shouldn't have used augmented twice. Anyway,
I like it.
Where all you have to do is just say something like that, and it enters the sonosphere, the real life Twitter sphere.
That is the most terrifying thing I've ever heard. Because you know
and
me,
people are bombarded in real time to their eyeballs.
Yeah, I don't.
Hey, as long as you don't put hashtag in front of it, it won't go out.
All right,
we'll be there someday.
Maybe get away with that.
We'll be there someday. Just you wait.
I think it's still dangerous. The future scares me.
It totally is.
I want to
stay
stuck right here in the present, or if possible, travel back in the past a little bit. And that's what these kind of episodes are all about for me.
Exactly. And we're actually going to be doing both of those right now because we're going to be looking at something about the future that happens to be from the past. Today, folks, we are talking about the Metroid series. Now, I know our last series, or our last episode for that matter, was on a series, and I don't want you guys to think this is going to be what they're all about. It's not like every single one of these theme shows is going to be us gushing over a series that we really like. But there's so much that goes into... Yeah, of course. Like, there's going to be other topics we do and discussion points and things of that ilk, but with Nintendo, it works really well because it allows us to be informative and informational, share some stories from our childhood and our history, which I always think is a lot of fun with any gaming podcast or video. Those personal stories, those are fun. And on top of that, we can also take more of a critical look at some of the later series. I think it's kind of a three-figured punch, and it works really well. So we're going to do a few more of these, and you just got to deal with it.
Right, and I think it makes sense to do these kind of episodes now, right up front, because we're knocking shit off our wish list. Like, hey, if you're going to do a theme episode, what would you like to talk about? Well, of course, Zelda and Metroid and shit like this. We're right at the top of the list, so we're doing it.
Yeah, and spoiler, we're probably going to hit the Nintendo franchises for another couple of these. Maybe not like the next one, but there's going to be a few more of them. They're just begging for it after all.
Right. And they're being set up so we can knock them out, man. Go through... Well, I wouldn't say all of them, because there's some of them that we probably should just not mention because we haven't played enough of.
Yeah, it's definitely true. Like, Donkey Kong, for instance, I'm not sure I could really talk about that one. I've played a lot of Donkey Kong games, but it's been so long for so many of them, it would just be me sitting here going like, yeah, I remember something about that. I think I played that.
God damn it. That's exactly what my episodes are going to be like. But not this one, and that's why we decided to do it as the second theme episode, so...
Exactly, and enough of the inside baseball for you guys. Let's just go ahead and get right into this before we start talking about the glory, the majesty that is Metroid, though. Shaun, you big piece of shit, what have you been
up to? Getting maybe food poisoning from shrimp. That's about it, though. I've been working, I actually had today off, so I just did a lot of sleeping and feeling like shit from being drunk.
That'll do.
And, yeah, not too much that I'd like to share with the world, because, people are fucking dicks, but I've been good, man. I've been happy lately.
That's good. I've been on a little bit of a Roy Rogers kick. Do you know what a Roy Rogers is?
Oh, the drink.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Do you ever wonder
I think
why
that's
the
what my
fuck it's
grandma
called Roy
drinks it.
Rogers?
I don't
Okay,
know. There's a Roy Rogers. I always think of like my grandma used to read these trashy novels, with like the shirtless Fabio on the cover. And there's a movie, I think, about Roy Rogers that looked like that to me, and I think she had it. So that's all I know of Roy Rogers.
I didn't know that even. For those that don't know, Roy Rogers is a cherry cola, essentially made with grenadine. It's a cherry cola. Like, what got me started on this kick at work, I was fucking around with one of my coworkers there, and we were making fun of people that order Roy Rogers or Arnold Palmer. Like, why are drinks named after people? And even more so for like Shirley Temple and Roy Rogers. A, why is it always a cherry-infused drink? And B, why isn't it a cherry Sprite or a cherry Coke? It doesn't make any sense. So this is a weird thing about me, but when people do things that I think are stupid or piss me off or bug me, by making fun of them, I start doing it until I just do it as a habit.
You're like, oh, look at those fags sucking all that dick. I don't know what it's all about.
yeah, and then 6 months later, it's like, well, fuck, now I'm doing it too.
This dick's not that bad. I don't know why everybody's tripping out about it.
Exactly. Like, I have a friend from Scotland, and a lot of people there say gid, G-I-D, rather than good, and I thought that was stupid as shit, and he thought that was stupid as all shit, so I started doing it just to be, like, ironic and satirical. Now we just do it all the time. Like, that's just a thing now.
And it's easier with languages to pick it up subconsciously. You start almost, not mocking, but miming or mimicking how other people speak when you're around them long enough.
Yeah, and it starts off in like a mocking type of fashion, and then it becomes real. Same with hashtags. I used to think hashtags were retarded. Now I find myself doing it, still in an ironic way, but I use them far more frequently than I'd like to admit. And this was another one of those things where we were making fun of people with their Roy Rogers cherry Coke nonsense. So then I started saying it a whole bunch, and then I started making them and drinking them, and my God, they're good.
So wait, is everybody at work just looking at you like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? He was the guy leading the fuck Roy Rogers charge, and now he's completely 180. Every time he comes in, he goes and gets a Roy Rogers immediately.
Too. Like, I don't just make one and drink it. I make one, and I announce to the back of the house, I think it's Roy Rogers time. Like, this is an exciting event that's going on. And then, of course, we get the whole thing, how's Roy Rogers feel in you? Is he fulfilling you? Is that exciting? As you do.
Of course. That's awesome.
He had this table that was drinking a cherry Coke, so we made sure that I went out to his table rather than him and sat it down and made sure to, like, specifically overemphasize, here's your Roy Rogers, and then just walk away.
Hell yeah. Put some extra Roy in that.
Yeah. Roy doesn't let down. Roy's satisfied.
Yeah, Roy sounds like a black guy's name, so I could imagine.
Okay, well, in that case, Roy satisfies too much. It's like permanent damage from it. But...
Yeah, Roy's painful.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I've never had one, but I'll be sure next time I go to the bar to ask my bartender to make me a nice Roy Rogers.
Seriously, like, fuck cherry Coke, fuck cherry Pepsi, Roy Rogers. That's really the moral. That's what I was.
The moral is probably you should eat breakfast before you drink a soda. That's what I got out of it. Because I hadn't eaten anything and then I just drank a soda.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. It's like chewing gum before you eat something. Heartburn like a motherfucker.
Yeah. Indeed. All right. So, anyway, moving on. Today, we are going to be talking about
30 different spots there to cut.
Bullshit. Honestly, people, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to be straight. What you just listened to is probably the most compelling part of the episode. So,
yes, exactly. If you didn't like this, if you don't get it now, get the fuck out. You're not going to like the rest of it.
Yeah. That'll do. That'll do. Anyway, so Metroid. Blah. The first game in the series that we're going to talk about is Metroid. Shocker. So this was originally released in Japan for the Famicom Disk System in '86, later released in America for the NES in '87, and also released in Japan for the NES in '86. This is really the first game, to my knowledge at least, that did the whole, you find a better item, you come back and backtrack and find some more items later. Like, I think it was revolutionary. Yeah, I think it was revolutionary for its overall game design, not in the fact that it's an action platformer, but in the fact that you needed to find things from later to go back through this, like, labyrinth maze of a world that you were going through to find hidden items. I am no expert on classic games. There's tons of like really obscure ones that I haven't played, but this is the first one that I know of that really did that. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, definitely. I can't think of anything before Metroid that did. I mean, Kid Icarus, was that before or after?
I don't know.
And I mean, that really didn't have the backtracking, but they felt very similar. But either way, this was part of.
It was
Nintendo.
slightly after.
Okay, this was just part of Nintendo fucking throwing out all the greatest shit. They took over the world in the late 80s because of games like Mario and Metroid, and I mean, they were just so, and Zelda obviously, but they were so amazingly unique and something new. And now you can look at a 2D platformer like this and say, oh, maybe that's a little played out, or there's a billion games like that. But at the time, this was completely revolutionary.
It had a lot going for it, too. It had a story, which for a lot of NES games was saying something, so it had a little bit of a story and a reason for you to be there doing this thing. You wore this cool powered suit, you were on this crazy alien planet, you fought big alien bosses, and the big kicker, the clincher for a lot of people was, at the end, if you did well enough, it was revealed that the person you were playing as, Samus Aran, was actually a girl, which kind of blew people's fucking minds, obviously, because this was
right,
the
and you couldn't have found that out your first playthrough, or maybe even your second, because you have to beat the game in under an hour, I think, to even see that. So, like, you have to know your shit and be on it. I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
I don't remember what exactly you had to do. I think it was some combination of time and completion percentage. But the original game for the Famicom Disk System did not have a battery backup because it wasn't actually a cartridge, so you had to use passwords. When it was ported to the NES, which is the same exact game essentially, that did have a battery backup, so you could save, but it also had passwords in it. So there were passwords that you could put in to like start the game with all equipment or crazy goofy nonsense like that. Or I think another way of doing it was naming your save file a certain name would also do stuff like that.
Yeah, I never knew that when I was a kid. And I didn't know that.
Yeah, this is stuff we found out
about an hour ago.
Internet.
Yeah.
Well, hey, there you go.
It feels like
this game's hard as
like
balls, though.
My friends should have been telling me at school.
Yeah, your friends were just doing a disservice to you.
Yeah.
They were letting you down.
But when did you play this game? Did you play it when it first came out? Or obviously not when it first came out, because neither one of us were alive, but...
Yeah, exactly. I had this game with my original big, giant set of NES games, but I never beat it. It was too hard.
Okay, yeah. You know what? If I would have played it as a young child, I probably never would have beat it either. But I ended up playing it years later on, I think first time for me for the original Metroid was on Metroid Prime.
Yep, that was the first time for a lot of people, I reckon.
Because, but it wasn't the first Metroid that I played, but it was the first time I went around and finally played the original. And I was kind of, I was just surprised at how dark and gloomy and depressing the first Metroid is for a Nintendo game. Oh yeah, it's brutally difficult in some areas, and if you fuck up, you got to go a long ways back.
You can really
lose a lot of time
over too. Like if you get in a situation where you've wasted too much of your ammo and you have like no missiles and you really need them, well, you're kind of boned. You need to get the fuck out of there and go find something, come back.
Yep,
I remember that being an issue for it.
I don't think it doesn't, like, it's like with the first Zelda, or maybe even more cryptic, where it just doesn't tell you to go anywhere. You just start, and you realize you can't go through this area because you're too big. You know what I mean? So you keep looking around, you find a morph ball. Yeah, it is. Well, classic NES.
Down, don't tell you what's going on, and just like, hey, you're playing this game now, hit buttons and figure out what's going on. That's it, you're dropped in.
Yeah, that helped me get immersed in games more, honestly.
I'm not sure I really gave it too much thought as a kid. It just was what it was. It was almost par for the course, you know?
Well, yeah, I'm not saying that I, like, consciously got more immersed. I'm saying because of the way games made me play them back then, I feel like I got into them more. I hold, like, the memories I have last longer from those kind of games. And it could all just be rose-colored glasses being a kid, but, like, at the same time, I remember actual parts of, these games, and I don't do that with a lot of games anymore. I'll remember, like, the overarching story and just kind of move on.
I think a lot of it, too, is because these were early experiences for us, so they're really more formative and meaningful because they were new. You know, it's so rare that you actually get to have a new experience in video games nowadays. And even when you do, it's normally just some like new concoction of derivative nonsense. It can be really good, but it's normally not something that's actually unique. It's just a new combination of pre-existing ideas. Back then, that wasn't the case. Things were brand new and unique. You were having that type of experience for the first time ever. That sticks with you.
Yeah, and like finding all the secrets back then, like, you know, I didn't know anything about secrets. All I knew about was, you know, the Mario Warp World and then all the fucking hidden shit in this game. That was so crazy to me as a kid. You know, because you'd walk into a room and you have to bomb every little piece of wall because there could possibly be, you know, a tiny little morph ball hole that take you to a new room with missiles or something. You never knew. I love that shit.
Yeah, for sure. Now, this game did get a remake. We're going to be talking about these in order of release, so we'll be coming to the infamous Metroid Zero Mission when we get to it, which is going to be a little while from now. But I do want to mention one more thing about this before we move on. Did you know, this is a fun little bit of trivia, that the morph ball was not initially a design choice, if that makes sense? They didn't come up with that for the characters, like this cool thing that she could do, and implement it into the game because they wanted to.
It was like a limitation, right?
It was a memory limitation, and the morph ball animation took up such a small amount of memory that they were able to put it on there, whereas animating Samus crawling took up too much memory, and there was not enough space for it. So her iconic morph ball power only exists because of memory limitations on the NES and Famicom.
That's awesome. There's a lot of great shit that came out of, like, creative, how are we going to make this work on these limitations? I think that's probably the best example. Definitely the most iconic that I can think of.
It is definitely a really good example of it. It's just something that's really cool, too. You don't see stuff like that very often.
And imagine what Metroid would be without the morph ball. Imagine if that bitch was just crawling.
That would suck. There's entire gameplay elements that would be gone. Like,
yeah, dude, like, you know, morph bomb jumping or whatever the fuck you call it. Doing, like, the double jump with the little morph bombs. That's awesome.
Yeah, and the spider ball. There's so much we'd be missing out on. Anyway,
and so many ways to break the game.
Yeah, seriously. Do you have anything else to add about the first one?
No, it's awesome. That sums it up for me. I love Metroid. That's one of the best NES games ever made. Go buy it. Go play it.
I'm actually not going to recommend that people play it. Because Zero Mission exists, I would only recommend that. But that's just my look at it.
Yeah, because you don't respect history.
So the next game in the series... Okay, anyway. So the next game in the series is Metroid 2 Return of Samus. The follow-up to the original game came out on the Game Boy. The original Game Boy in 1991. This game, man, this game is a bitch. I completed the whole thing. Sean, you have not, correct?
I have not. I have played it, and I gotta be honest with you, really did not like it. And it's just because it's a Game Boy, and Samus is like fucking half the screen tall, and it just, I don't know. It was hard to get into because of that, and ever since I found out about a better version of this game happening, I'll just wait. So I do feel guilty about never playing it.
I don't blame you. Honestly, if I could go back, I wouldn't have played it. I played this maybe when I was about 12, so a good long ways after it came out. Went back and got myself a complete copy off eBay. Fairly spendy even back then. I can't imagine what they go for now. But fuck, this game is hard. So it's really, really, really zoomed in compared to the original Metroid game. Samus takes up like a quarter of the screen, and that makes it really hard to see what's going on, because the screen is bigger than what you can see. You can jump and move around, and like there's more of the screen that can be shown. So you don't see what's happening. Enemies come from blind spots that shouldn't exist. It's also a giant labyrinth. It's so hard to tell where the fuck you're going, because it all looks so samey. I played this game with a walkthrough because I was horribly lost without one. Managed to track everything down and get 100%, but there were a couple of times where I got lost from where I was in the walkthrough and was just convinced that not only would I never find my way back to that spot in the guide, but that I would probably never figure out where the fuck I was in the game. Because, if memory serves, the game has no map at all.
Oh, really? God, that's a game breaker for a Metroid, man.
Just absolutely brutal. So, yeah, Metroid 2, little bit of a misstep in my opinion. There is no doubt about that, and I can't honestly recommend that people go and play it. I also don't remember if it added anything new to the series. Do you? I don't know if any of, like, the standard, like, the grappling hook or the charge beam or, like, I can't remember if this actually had anything that it brought to the table that was new.
No, I seem to remember the only thing that I could think of that was new was, like, there was, like, some whole space pirate storyline that came into play in the Metroid universe. Do you remember any of that?
Okay, it looks like the spider ball was introduced here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, spider ball. I know what that is for some reason, but I can't think of what it is. What's the spider ball?
It's the morph ball thing where she can attach to certain tracks.
Oh,
in later games, she attaches to tracks. And this one, I think she could just attach to the wall or stuff and just, like, kind of go along it that way.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, so that's cool and all, but they are remaking Metroid 2 with the Super Metroid-style graphics. Honestly, just download and play that. Fuck the original. It's just not worth your time.
So what made you play this one? You know what I mean? If you hadn't played Metroid 1 till Prime, what made you jump in and play 2?
I really liked the series, and this was the one, at that point, the one that I hadn't played.
Okay, so you were just really into the
Metroid,
series at that point.
I wasn't really coming to that. Yeah, I was just trying to track down the stuff that I hadn't played yet. And speaking of Super Metroid, that is the next game in the series, and that was released 3 years later in 1994, exclusively for the Super Nintendo. Did you play this back in the day, Sean?
I did a few years after it came out, so still kind of back in the day, around PlayStation era.
Okay, I completely missed this. My first Metroid game was Fusion.
Wow. You know what, though? I think a lot of people's first game might have been Fusion. Fusion or Zero Mission.
No, that's not fair. I played the original back in the day, like we were just saying, so that wasn't truly my first one. Fusion was the first one that I actually got into and beat, because I just wandered around, hopelessly lost in the original, and never got very far. But Fusion, I got it, I loved it, I completed it. I consider that my first one, because that was my first full experience with Metroid. But yeah, I completely missed Super Metroid. So what did you think of this back in the day? Was it, like, mind-blowing?
Oh yeah, dude, because it was my first experience with a Metroid game, and it was a neighbor of mine who was super into it or whatever, and I was over there jumping on a trampoline or whatever, and the motherfucker just come run outside, would always tell us about, you know, the new games, da-da-da. He was quite a bit older than we were. And, you know, we all went down there and we're watching him play this game, and I remember begging him to let me borrow it and da-da-da and all this stuff like that, and, like, maybe it took weeks, but I did actually borrow a copy from him. And the first time I played it, I remember the music kind of gave me a chill. Like, it was spooky to me as a, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, whatever it was. It was spooky as shit. I remember being spooked or creeped out by that game. And I remember getting my ass kicked a lot. I didn't actually beat the game until years later on an emulator.
Damn.
And maybe, you know, I just sucked. I'll admit it. But I didn't know what I was doing, and it was hard for me.
Plus, they're not exactly known.
Like, brutally hard. Yeah, but I remember just getting frustrated because, I died a lot, you know? I just sucked at that kind of game. I hadn't played anything like that. Back then, I was really into RPGs more so than anything, so any kind of, twitch action or anything like that, I just hadn't been playing those kind of games forever, so that game kicked my ass. But it was so beautiful, and the graphics, I think that one is, well, you know, Fusion and Zero Mission are the same engine or same look, but the graphics for that hold up probably better than any other Super Nintendo game, maybe other than Mario World, that I can think of.
Yeah, I agree. I still see something like that. When a game is done in that style, like some of the DS Mega Man games or something, you know, obviously it's not exactly the same, but something that kind of looks like that, I just absolutely love it. Like, I really, really like that look. I completely agree with you there. And the Super Nintendo, for so many things, and I think Metroid is no different, is when the amazing ideas that they had on the NES, but were rough because of the hardware, could be fully realized. I think it's the same for Zelda, it's the same for Mario, certainly the same for Metroid. Like, they had such strong foundations already, but then with the power of the Super Nintendo to make things bigger, make things more complicated, make things smoother, and just the colors and the music, and just absolutely awesome. I ended up going back and playing this on an emulator many, many, many years after it came out, And I absolutely loved it because I didn't really know what I was missing. So having started with Fusion and having already played Zero Mission at that point, to go back and find that there was another game like that I had missed out on was such an exciting thing for me.
Yeah, that was a good time to play all three of those together.
Super Metroid also introduced, I'm not going to go through what they are because I haven't done the research and don't remember well enough, but a lot of things that are standard in the Metroid series, a lot of power-ups and gameplay mechanics. Pretty much any of them that you're going to find later on came from Super Metroid if they didn't already exist. Like, that was the final big jump for the series for what is to be standard and expected, which is really cool.
Different types of missiles and shit like that?
The different missiles, the different suit power-ups. I think power bombs started there. Those might have been in Metroid 2, but I can't remember. The super fast running ability, like, so many things came from that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. God, now I want to play that game again.
You know
what happens when we talk about these things?
What really surprises me about Super Metroid, it never got a remake. Never even got a re-release.
Yeah, it should have got one for GBA. When they did Zero Mission and Fusion.
The Game Boy Advance is a portable Super Nintendo. And we got the original Metroid released in the classic NES series. The second one was kind of left to falter, which is fine. It's a piece of shit anyway. But Super Metroid never got a remake. It never got a port. Never anything. Honestly, that game and Mario Adventure Legend of the Seven Stars, whatever, the Square Enix or Squaresoft Mario RPG.
Yeah.
Both of those Super Nintendo games were really high-profile releases and are absolutely beloved, and both of them never got a remake or a port. I don't understand it.
And I think that, some people are really fond of the graphics for Super Mario RPG. I think that needs a remake. I think the graphics look like shit now.
Yeah,
Super Metroid holds up. You can go back and play it. It doesn't look like shit, but it'd be nice to have a more updated version. But Super Mario just fucking flat out needs it.
Actually, Secret of Mana is another game that never got a remake. I just don't understand. If they would have just ported these games to the Game Boy Advance, people would have bought them up. They already exist. It's not that hard to just port it over to similar hardware. Like, just doesn't make any sense to me. And those three games in particular are always what I think of when I say, oh, well, I don't collect for old systems because nearly everything I want has been ported. Those three games are hanging heavily in that nearly clause.
Yeah, are you going to go shell out the money?
Nah, definitely not. They exist on Virtual Console and emulators, and that's just going to have to be good enough until Nintendo gets their head out of their ass and gives us a new physical version of them.
Yeah, it'd be cool if they did like a Metroid bundle where Fusion, Zero Mission, and Super Metroid on the 3DS.
That would definitely be cool.
Everybody would buy that. Nintendo, are you listening?
Fucking do it.
Somebody listen to me.
Yeah, that's probably not going to happen, though, because the Metroid series has kind of been forsaken because they keep fucking it up.
They do fuck it up, man. Well, do they keep fucking it up?
Well, maybe they don't keep fucking it up, but they certainly, the last Metroid game that we might ever get, they fucked it up. But we'll get to that at the end. Next up on our list is the aforementioned Metroid Fusion, the fourth game in the series, and my first one. Sean, did you play this when it first came out? I know you had already played the series before this, but...
Yeah, I played this when it first came out. I was all about this game.
I ended up getting this because there was a mech person on the front, and I didn't know anything else about it, really, because I just forgot that I played the original one.
I wasn't even, trying to get the game. I got it, I think, as a birthday gift.
Damn.
So I just got it one day, and I don't know, on a whim, decided to play it, and got fucking hooked. This was my favorite Game Boy Advance game for a long time.
It's still one of my favorites.
Yeah, definitely still one of my favorites, but this was, later on I got into the Game Boy Advance a little bit more and started playing like Final Fantasy Tactics and shit like that. But this one probably had the second most playtime out of all my GBA games, because I know I beat it at least 3 times.
100%ing this game took work. Some of the shit was so well hidden.
Yeah, there were a ton of secrets in this one, and there probably were in Super Metroid too, but
I think they were harder to find in Fusion, though.
Yeah, I finished Fusion before I ever finished Super Metroid, so okay. Fusion's kind of like my definitive Metroid, for me, because it was I think it might have been the first one I actually completed, and that's what got me super into Metroid, you know. That's why I went back and finished Super Metroid. That's why I played Prime and blah, blah, was because of Fusion. I loved not just the graphic style, but I just loved the colors they used for that planet. A lot of purples, and it's just a really cool look. I loved the fact that they would like lay out plot and story and all that shit like that. I know a lot of people didn't like that because it was like the first Metroid game to really do that, to hold you in a room and make you read the text from the computer terminals.
It wasn't too obtrusive, though. I don't feel like it. It was nice to have
people complain
story.
about it, though.
Yeah, and I get that.
Complain about Fusion. That's what they're bitching about.
Because it was something new. I like what they did, though. It didn't, like we're going to discuss with a later game, it didn't really ruin any of the characters. It just gave you some story for what was going on. And this one did focus on story more, because it starts off with her being infected by this new life form, almost dying, and in order to save her, they infuse her with a Metroid. Like, she literally has a Metroid that she's genetically connected to now to save her life. And her suit gets altered, and you actually have this new life form that, like, copied her DNA running around in her normal Various suit, how she's looked in all the other games, like, hunting you throughout the game. And throughout the entire game, when you get into fights with it, you're fucked. Like, there's a survival horror Nemesis-esque thing going on where you have encounters with it where you have to hide or you'll just get killed.
Yep. Well, do you have to hide? Because I always heard there were rumors like, oh, you could beat her if you da-da-da.
As far as I know, you can't beat her.
Yeah.
The best you can hope to do is hurt it and get away.
And it was tough. I remember, the first couple of times you didn't know that you couldn't fight. So you're trying to fight and you're just getting your fucking ass handed to you.
Yep.
And I'm sure, as a kid, I didn't read enough. There was probably a part that said, don't bother trying to blah, 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 hide. But at first, I didn't, must have not read that part, because I just remember going after it over and over, and then finally realizing, you cannot beat her. Try to hide somewhere.
I think that this is also my favorite Metroid game for this style. Not necessarily that the game itself, like the level design or the enemies, are any better or worse than Super and Zero Mission. I like the setting. I like the fact that they switched it up with a new suit and the SAX hunting you, and the story elements they added, like, just a lot of the things around the setting for it, I think add some nice pizzazz and extra flair that the other two games of this ilk don't quite have, and that's what sets it apart for me.
Yeah, it's hard to describe. I feel like this one pops more than the other ones.
But only so slightly, because the other ones are just so good, too. It's got that X factor, though.
That SAX factor.
You got it. All right, so that was released in 2002, so we're up into the new millennium here, and released about 6 months later of the same year was a revolutionary change for Metroid. Like, this rocked people's worlds, this divided fans, and once everybody got their panties unbunched and accepted what we had gotten, this became a beloved classic that is just admired the world over. The original Metroid Prime. Metroid enters the first-person shooter/adventure territory.
And oh my god, it was amazing.
So Sean, did you play this back at release?
Yes, I actually, because of Fusion, this game I did beg and cry and kick and scream for. And when I got it, I was not disappointed at all. It was probably the most immersed I had been in a game up to that point, because of being, like, I remember thinking of it as, like, Fusion, but from a first-person perspective. Obviously, that wasn't the case, but, like, just thinking about that world that I kind of thought I knew and seeing what it actually looked like. And I remember the foliage was, like, fucking awesome. Like, if you're a GameCube, like, it had wind effects and shit. Like, I remember shit moving. I just remember thinking that this was the best-looking game I had ever played. Because, especially on GameCube, like, I don't know if this was before or after the Resident Evil remake, but, like, it looked real to me. More so than most other games. Like, it was very hard sci-fi, so maybe that takes some of the realism out, but, compared to, like, Mario games and all, all the other shit that was on Nintendo, a lot of it was a little cartoony. This shit was real to me. Like,
it was real. Also, another thing that really added to that, they wanted this to feel like you were Samus, which I know a lot of developers come out and say, like, oh, for a first-person game, you're seeing through the eyes of a character, and blah, 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 this and that. Yeah, okay, but For this, they really wanted you to feel like you were the eyes behind the suit. So when you were in a place where it was hot, there would be steam on your visor. When it was cold outside, ice would fall and it would freeze over a little bit. Like, the visor actually reacted to where you were at in the environment. It sounds like such a small thing, but it added so much immersion to it. You felt like Samus. You were seeing through her eyes for once rather than watching her whole body move. With the gun there and viewing her screen, and it was just awesome. Also, another thing, the music in this game was just fantastic.
Yeah, see, I don't remember it.
Gregorian chanting and really exciting pieces, and just everything fit so well to make it feel like this adventure on this alien planet. Everything just felt like that, and the music really, really added to it.
And it was another case of a game being tough in some area. Like, I mean, it was not an easy Nintendo game. It was a tough game, and it was, I don't know, I think at the time I was playing first-person shooters, was that and Ghost Recon on the GameCube. And when you say, like, oh, they want you to be immersed and this and that, well, those games, you don't even have fucking legs. You know what I mean? Like, you're just a gun floating in the air. And I remember in Metroid, it really did feel like they wanted you to feel more immersed than that, because there was so much emphasis on not just, like you're saying, like the suit doing things, but whenever they had to come out of the first-person perspective, they focused so much on the suit and how the suit looked. Like, just even in that transformation, when you go from standing to transforming into the morph ball, that little the animation is so awesome and so, suit focused. They make the suit look so fucking cool every time you do see it. I don't know. I love the suit in that game. And I just like the contours of the little morph ball are so fucking cool to me.
Yeah, most
seeing
definitely.
it in 3D like that.
It's also worth noting that the game still had platforming elements to it. It wasn't all just raw first-person adventure. Like, you still had platforms you had to bounce around on. You transformed into the morph ball and it went third person, and you had to go through stuff that way. Like, it was still a platformer.
There were a lot of puzzles.
It still had puzzles. It still had backtracking. Like, it was a true Metroid game, just it was done from the first person this time. And with that, the way that you fought enemies changed, because you needed to lock onto this part of them and shoot them in that spot. That was the other really interesting thing. It wasn't a typical first-person shooter in that, it was dual stick like every other first-person shooter. You could freely control the camera, or her arm for that matter, but when you did that, you couldn't move. The game really worked on a lock-on system. So it was more focused, I guess, kind of more comparable to like GoldenEye or Turok, in that you ran around and, the screen just stayed stationary as far as you weren't looking up and down and left and right. It was more just like, you looked that way and you walked that way. I mean, maybe you could expand on what I'm saying a little bit more, but it wasn't a dual-stick first-person shooter. It was really, you controlled it with the left. If you needed to look up or down, you could hold down a button to do that, but otherwise you locked on, and that's how you shot things.
Yeah, I think it created a feeling where you weren't like a walking death tank. You weren't fucking, you weren't James Bond. You weren't running through with a bunch of guns and just shooting and killing everything. I mean, you could, but that's not how it was meant to be played. That wasn't the feeling that they gave you. It was more exploratory and patient. I feel like it wasn't meant for you to just like blaze through it as fast as you can. Even in the way that it controls, like you're saying, if you want to look up and down, you have to stop and all this shit. Like, it really felt like they paced it to be an exploration game where you have to do all your combat from the first person, or you're always in first person, but the combat's just different. You're still exploring, just like a normal Metroid game.
Yeah, definitely adds a different feeling though. It makes it feel less like standard FPS-y, which was kind of cool.
And I will say, because of the changing to the first person perspective, I always kind of feel like this sense of loneliness and emptiness when you're playing a Metroid game, because it's just like, how alone you are. From the first-person perspective in that game, it's like cranks that up to 11, dude. I remember feeling like really creeped out, like, aliens type shit.
It really does, and that's what they were going for, too, because she ends up following the space pirates to this abandoned planet where the Chozo, who raised her and, like, gave her suit and everything, used to live. So you're going through ruins, and you're finding ruined cities and ruined computers, and space pirates had a bit of an operation going on there, too, but, like, throughout the whole thing, there's just death and emptiness. Like, people used to be here, bad shit happened, they got wiped out. and you're exploring kind of what happened.
And all the environments, while, I mean, maybe they're kind of cliche in what they are, they did them really well, and it was really cool. Like, they had, like, the lava hot area section and the, the cold icy section and the tropical whatever. Shit like that. I mean, it looked really, really nice. And everything just was beautiful. The entire game I don't think you can find a spot where it doesn't look great or an angle that isn't amazing.
Yeah, that was a very interesting game for its time. Also kind of fucking rough for completionists, because not only do you need to go and find everything like in a normal Metroid game, but there was also a scanning mode to her visor. And there was a lot of things that were only one-time only scans. So sometimes you'd be fighting a boss, and you just have to stop, scan the boss, scan this thing in this corner of the room, scan this tube over there, and if you didn't do that in time, well, fuck you. You're not getting your 100% completion.
I had forgotten about that, and now you say it, I start having flashbacks. I do remember that was a pain in the ass, dude. Scanning everything. It didn't ruin the game, but I do remember that being frustrating.
I ended up having to completely replay it because of that.
Ugh. Well, at least it's a good game. You didn't have to replay some piece of shit.
Yeah, for sure. And hard mode was actually pretty hard, too. That was back in the days when I had more time and patience, so I 100% of that game, regular and hard mode, and the final boss on hard mode is just a fucking nightmare. God, it's hard.
I don't remember what I played it on. I probably didn't play it on hard.
You unlock hard once you beat the game, so you'd have to play it through a second time if you wanted hard.
Yeah, I probably started it, never completed it.
Yeah, but I love Metroid Prime, and I have nothing but good things to say about it. I was on kind of in the camp of like, hey, what are they doing to Metroid? This is weird. But once you play it, if you can just let that nonsensical bias go, you could really experience this brand new thing, and it was just awesome. I got that for Christmas the year it came out, and I remember sitting down here playing it on my GameCube, just blown away. My neighbor came over, and we just sat there, played it all day as he just watched, and it was just awesome. It was so enthralling, you wanted to keep going.
Now, was there any split screen shit to be done with that game?
Nah, and to be honest, he watched me play a lot of games back in the day. It always bugged me a little bit. This is something I don't do well with someone just sitting here watching me play a game. Whether they're having fun or not, I feel uncomfortable. But he did that all the time, and that was one of the games he did that on. Just sat here and watched me play the whole thing. Okay.
Yeah, I don't mind that, because I've been him and been you in those situations before. I don't mind. It's just like, I was doing it playing like Portal 2, so it's like, if you figure out the answer, don't fucking tell me, dude. Let me figure it out. Like, that kind of shit. That's all you gotta look out for.
Right.
But,
yeah, so that's Metroid Prime. The next game was a huge return to form for Metroid fans, and really kind of put to rest some of the fears that we were only going to be getting Metroid Prime content, and that was Metroid Zero Mission. This game is fucking awesome, and I was so excited for this after playing Fusion. When this was announced, I saw things about it and found out what it was. I was giddy as all hell, saved up my money. I bought this on release day. How about you, Sean?
I don't know if I bought it on release day, and you're going to be like, what the fuck? I didn't even know what this game was. You know what I mean? I didn't know when it was coming out or anything. I happened to go to the store to get something else, get a different game, and then I saw that and was like, what the fuck? This isn't Fusion, and bought it immediately.
Nice. I had a Nintendo Power subscription through most of, I don't know, I probably had one for 10 years. So I happen to know about this, long ahead of time. So for those that don't know, Zero Mission is a complete remake of the original Metroid in the Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion engine, with a big additional scenario added to the end where you do stuff in the Zero suit, outside of your suit, with the Space Pirates. So it's the entire original game, with extra story added, all of the gameplay mechanics that are standard to the series now, and additional content at the end. This is the most perfect remake we could ever ask or hope for.
Yep. And it's, I gotta be honest, I don't remember knowing that it was a remake when I was playing it.
I'm not sure if they make that too. I don't remember if it's on the box or if they really made that too obvious. Again, I knew about it because of Nintendo Power, so it was announced as such, and I went into it.
But for me, this was just, in my head, my little stupid mind, was, Metroid Fusion 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or, so I was... And it felt like Fusion, in a lot of ways.
In a ton of ways, yeah.
I think that it was probably paced better. I remember I kind of remember having more fun with this, if that makes sense, because I like Fusion more, but I remember Zero Mission being more fun. Like, the boss fights were more fun.
What I will give to Zero Mission is got to be the boss fights. The boss fights are more iconic because Kraid, Ridley, Mother Brain, they're such iconic characters for the Metroid series. To see them fully redone and actually looking awesome because they were in this engine now was really exciting and cool. And while the bosses in Fusion are cool in fact, you fight a Mecha Ridley, if I remember correctly. Like, it definitely has some nods in it. Just seeing these classic bosses look like that was just too cool.
Yeah, agreed. Made the experience even better for it.
Yeah, and
especially
running around
if you had played the original before this.
Definitely, because then you could actually see the transformation. The ending bit, too, that they added, where you were on the Space Pirate Station and running around in your Zero suit because you lose your suit, that was really cool. That changed the game up quite a bit because you were weak now. In fact, if I remember correctly, your gun only stunned. I don't think you could kill Space Pirates with your little pistol.
Oh, wow.
I could be wrong, though. I could be wrong. At the very least, it's much weaker than our arm cannon, but it changed up the game, and it was funny because it was nearly at the end of it. I mean, it was at the end of the original game, and then this new content starts, so you feel strong by that point, and then you're not.
Yeah, it's
so
almost
that's kind
like
of an interesting change-up.
It's almost like they Metroided Metroid. Like, you know how those games you always start off super buffed out, and then 2 minutes into it you lose everything? They kind of did that with the entire game.
Yeah, most definitely.
They set their own game up to be replayed again. Genius.
Indeed. Love it. So that's Metroid Zero Mission. Nothing else to say about it, really. Moving on, the next game is Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. We got a sequel to Metroid Prime a couple years after it came out, also on the GameCube. And because it came out in holiday season, this is another one of those games where I got it for Christmas and started feverishly playing it. How about you? Did you play this when it came out, or no?
I've never played it.
Oh, you did.
This is my shame. I've
and
never
you got
played Echoes.
Echoes was awesome. Echoes had much more of an active story than the first Metroid Prime, because in Metroid Prime it was a exploration of a ruined civilization and a ruined planet where you happen to be having some fights with the space pirates in between it. Metroid Prime 2 wasn't. You were on a new planet, there was an active space pirate presence, there was an active alien presence on the planet, and there was an active, marine presence, her comrades. All of this swirling together. On top of that, the Phazon, which is the new thing that they introduced in Metroid Prime 1, this, living... I don't really know how to describe it. It's this substance. And it's living, and it kills or transforms people. She gets covered in it and manages to get it off and survive. But what she gets off takes on a life of its own as Dark Samus. So you have a dark, Phazon-infused being that has your abilities that's after you throughout this game, which is pretty fucking cool.
Kind of like Fusion.
Very much so like that. The game was more complicated than the first Metroid Prime, it was more difficult than the first Metroid Prime, and the puzzles were a lot more obtuse and esoteric. I had a lot more difficulty playing this game. But I still really liked it.
See, I thought... I'm looking... I'm looking at... what is it? Echoes is the second one, right?
Yeah.
This was still made by the Texas people?
By Retro? Yeah.
Oh, so they made the whole trilogy.
It's all theirs, beginning to end.
And so, overall, would you say it's better than the first one? Is there anything... Because all I've heard from you is, oh yeah, it's great, but you didn't like the puzzles. They were a little too obtuse. Well,
I don't really know if it's fair to say I didn't like them. They were more difficult, but that doesn't mean that that's a bad thing per se. I think I like the atmosphere of the first game more. But I think the second game is a little bit more complex and just has a little bit more going for it gameplay-wise. So I would take the setting of the first with the gameplay of the second and make this perfect amalgamation if possible.
And so you only played the GameCube version, though, right?
Correct. I've never played never played the Wii. Well, we'll get to that in just a moment. I've never played a Metroid Prime game on Wii, which means I have not played one we'll be talking about very soon. But yeah, Metroid Prime 2 Echoes is awesome. Sean, you got to fix that, man. You have got to go play Metroid Prime 2.
I know, but I got to be honest. I have other things, like Zelda kind of takes precedence over. Not because I don't like Metroid, but as much as I do like Prime, I would be way more inclined to go back and play a 2D Metroid that I hadn't played before I play the 3D one.
And that's cool.
That's just personal preference. It's nothing against it. I do feel guilty for not playing Echoes. I never owned it, and And it came out at a time where I was much more into sports and other things. Like, I stopped playing video games quite a bit after, like, Wind Waker. I took a pretty long break.
Right.
So this just happened to be during the dark years.
I guess so. Well, you'll have to fix that at some point, because you're missing out on a classic.
Yeah, one day, I promise.
Moving on a year later, in 2005, we got the first Metroid release for the DS, and that was Metroid Prime Pinball, which actually has a story mode, and they tried to make like a legitimate Metroid game in that sense. I own this for the collection. I've never played this. Have you?
No, I didn't know there was a story mode. That's incredible. Now you have to play it just to see.
Yeah, I don't know where it actually fits in with it, or how they tried to shoehorn that in. I really don't know.
I gotta be honest, man. I played Sonic Spinball and Pokemon Pinball, and I fucking hate pinball games like that.
I played Pokemon Pinball too, and that was enough. So I bought this years after it came out, purely to have in the collection. I have no intention of ever playing it. I just don't. It sits on the shelf because I need to have every Metroid game.
So neither one of us have ever or will ever play that game. If you're a fan of it, too bad.
So moving right the fuck along.
Right.
The next game in the Metroid series was also released for the DS, this one a year later, and this is Metroid Prime Hunters. Now, this game had existed for a couple of years previous to this, but hadn't actually been released. Metroid Prime Hunters, a demo for this game, was included with the original release, and not all original systems, only like the first print run of the original horrible, nasty, ugly, fat DS. I bought a Nintendo DS on launch day. I don't even know why, because there were barely any games released for it, and it took 2 or 3 years for me to really start buying games for it. But I bought into the hype. I went and bought one on launch day, and this demo came with it. At the time, it kind of blew my mind. Metroid Prime Hunters is a first-person shooter, just like the other Metroid Prime games, except in this one, you don't just run around and lock onto things, which would have made a lot of sense. No, you use the stylus to move. The stylus acts as the right analog stick in a standard first-person shooter, essentially. So you play with the D-pad on the left, you move the camera and your aiming reticle around with the stylus in your right hand, and then you shoot with L, and you can use the other buttons to do this and that. And it was pretty difficult to play, and the controls took a lot of time to get the hang of, but I played the absolute shit out of that demo, and it also had Wi-Fi competitive multiplayer, which was bananas for a handheld at that point.
Well, I wanted to ask you, what is the story mode like that has a story? Because I always thought it was a strictly multiplayer deal. I have never played this, by the way.
I played the demo. I own it. I've never played it, and honestly, going back and playing it with the obtuse controls, I'm not sure I could force myself through it. So I don't know what the deal with the story mode is.
Okay, because the way you were talking about it, you played the demo. I didn't know what the demo was. Was it like bot match or?
It was exactly that. Yeah.
Okay, so I thought the game was multiplayer only, but I always heard how it was one of the first and maybe one of the only that had real multiplayer on DS. Just like your Xbox would work.
Yeah, pretty exciting. A pretty revolutionary game for what it was able to accomplish, but due to the hardware it accomplished it on and what exactly it did, definitely not something that aged very well. More interesting to go back and look at if you just want to see a little bit of history, not necessarily if you want to play a great game, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the next game released was another year later. They were doing Metroid games every year there for a little while, just not really major ones, goofy stuff. But the next one was the finale to the Metroid Prime trilogy, Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, and they jumped up to the Wii for this one. And because they jumped up to the Wii, you now had full control over your aiming reticle, just like you do in Prime Hunter. So it's not like the first 2 Prime games, in that you run around and lock onto everything. But because it was on the Wii, you have full control over aiming with the Wiimote. Yeah.
Wait, before you get down on it, I heard it was really good.
I heard the same, but I gotta be honest, the reason I've never played this game, and I do plan on it at some point, is because of the controls.
Yeah, and there's no way you can't plug in a GameCube controller and play it that way.
No, the game is not built to be a lock-on centric shooter like the first 2 are. It's built for you to actually aim. And man, I hated the Wii. I gotta be honest, there's a lot of games on it that I loved. I fucking hated the Wii. I hated the shitty graphics. I hated the old-fashioned interface on it. I hated the controls. I hated the motion controls. The Wii can fuck off and die. I can't stand it. Nearly every game I've ever played on the Wii, all I could ever think about was, wow, I wish this was on a different system. Wow, I wish this was on a different system.
Yeah, I wish this was on even the GameCube.
Even the GameCube, because let's be honest, the graphics were barely any better on the Wii.
Oh, yeah, I don't think they were any better.
They were slightly better, but slightly is the big old keyword there. So, yeah, this is on the Wii. I know fuck all about this game. Apparently, it's really well received and really well liked, and there were some cool new suits and beams added. I'm going to play this bad boy at some point. I have to. I haven't yet, though, and the motion controls are why. So, that's that. And Sean, since you haven't played 2, I know you haven't played this one.
Oh, yeah, definitely. No way I played this. But I think maybe if I ever do play 2, I'll play it on the trilogy and play 2 and 3.
It's funny, you should mention the trilogy, because just 2 years later, the next Metroid game released was the Metroid Prime trilogy.
Oh, I didn't know we were going to bring that one up. I didn't know that counted.
We got to bring it up. It was released in 2009. Initially, this was released as a collector's edition only, which came in a steelbook, which is very rare for Nintendo, with a slipcover. A couple, I don't know, maybe in 2013 or so, it was actually reprinted by GameStop.
Yeah.
As a standard edition game, which is what I have now because I purged all of my collector's editions, so I was very happy that there was a standard case version of the game for me to pick up.
How much did you have to pay when you picked that up? I'm assuming you did it after you got rid of your collector's edition.
I want to say it was $50.
Nice. So that came down quite a bit because when it first came out, it was $90 or $99 at GameStop.
Well, that's because they were selling it as the used prices of the trilogy.
Right.
The trilogy sold out and got super expensive. Initially, the game was just $50 or $60, though.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. But when they reprinted and made those standard copies, any copy you find, somebody out there paid at least $70 for. If not $100.
Yeah. So this took the first 2 Metroid Prime games, ported them to Wii, took out the original controls, unless I'm mistaken, but I really think it did. And it definitely added in the controls of the third game.
Oh, I didn't know it took out the control. I thought it was an option on the first 2, but damn.
I might be wrong, but I'm nearly positive that you can only play the games with the Wiimote. Basically, you can play 1 and 2 the way that 3 is played. And they did this with some other GameCube games, too. There's like a Pikmin 1 and 2, they called it the New Play Control version, where you could play it with Wii controls. So this was that type of deal, just they did a trilogy with it for 3. As far as I know, the version of 3 that's included with this is completely unaltered.
It's funny that you say New Play Control version, because I just pulled up Metroid Prime Trilogy, and that's exactly what it is. Boom, right there, Metroid Prime New Play Control version.
Yep.
1 and 2. So, no GameCube support.
So there were some changes made to the original 2 games, though, aside from just changing the control scheme. So if you played 3 and you got used to the controls, which I think by the time you were, a little ways into it, you would get used to them, it's kind of worth going back and playing the first 2 this way. So Sean, you having not played 2 yet, that might not be such a bad thing. So the changes for 2, loading times were drastically reduced. You can perform a jump with the morph ball by flicking up on the Wiimote. So you don't have to...
that seems weird.
Because I believe in the first 2, the only way to jump was with bombs, but I can't remember. That might just be a control difference, to be honest. Bloom lighting has been added to all 3 games that didn't used to exist. Higher quality audio, true widescreen support for the first 2.
Nice.
3 difficulty settings. A hyper mode was added to the first 2 games. Morph ball bombs now leave rubble on the ground. Some rooms have more enemies than they were able to fit into the original. And there are 2 brand new types of missile pickups.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, so that's the definitive way to play it if the controls are playable.
Yeah, and there were several things added to the first game as well. I'm not going to go through all that, but so that's pretty cool.
And I think if I do, well, goddammit, when I do, I should probably just play through 1, then 2, and 3 on the trilogy.
It's probably not a bad idea. But yeah, if you get used to the controls, it's pretty cool, because you get the games that are just better in pretty much every way.
Plus, I don't even know if my Wii works anymore, dude. That thing hasn't been turned on in probably 3-4 years.
Well, to be fair, you need to get a Wii U at some point, so you could always just play it on there.
Yeah, I need to man up.
And that leaves us with one final Metroid game, released...
The best Metroid.
...nearly 5 years ago at this point, which is sad. We've not had a Metroid game since. That's like the longest stretch of time since Super Metroid Diffusion. And this came out in 2010. This was developed in conjunction with Team Ninja. Very odd decision. And this is Metroid Other M. This game is a really odd beast in just about every way. For the gameplay, it's 2.5D, kind of, where there are a lot of 2D side-scrolling type stuff like the old games, but that happens in a 3D world, so you can't just go left and right. Oftentimes you can actually go farther up and down and where you are, which is just confusing, especially because the game is made to be played with only the Wiimote. So you're doing 3D movement with a D-pad, which is gross, and there's barely any buttons on the fucking thing. And another thing that they added is when you then turned around and aimed the Wiimote at the screen, it went first-person shooter like the Metroid Prime games. But again, this is all with only using the Wiimote. It just, to me, especially as someone that didn't like the Wii controls as it is, it felt like a fucking mess. It didn't know if it was 2D, it didn't know if it was 3D, it didn't know if it was first-person. It was too much at once, and none of it ended up working. So you had all these disparate elements that just all worked like shit, all coming together to work like shit together.
That's too bad, because when I've only seen like videos on. I've never actually played this one either. It always looks good. Like I go like, oh man, that looks like it'd be fun. But yeah, I hear a lot of people complain about the writing in it. Another thing.
The writing is horrible. Team Ninja must have been the ones in charge of the story because there's a lot of dialogue from Samus, and they turn her basically into a helpless, and I am not somebody that jumps on the social justice feminism bandwagon, they completely turn her into a helpless little girl that needs to be saved, rescued, protected, and told what to do by all of the men in the game.
Yeah, because she's such a badass. That's so dumb. Yeah.
Absolutely ruin it. Honestly, I can't stand this game. I hate everything about it. I didn't end up finishing it.
Oh, wow.
I don't like it at all. I think it's a bad video game and a horrible Metroid game.
That is fucking horrible, dude, because that is the last one. It's been 5 years. There's no announcement of a new one. This is just going to sit there on your tongue and taste like shit for a long time.
Exactly, and that's really too bad. But that's it for Metroid games, people. Like, she's shown up in Super Smash Brothers, and that's about it.
Yeah, what do you think? Do you think Nintendo's, holding back, maybe taking their time? They're not giving up on Metroid. I mean, do you think we'll see one for the Wii U?
I want to see you know what? I gotta be honest. I would love nothing more than seeing a Fusion, Zero Mission, and Super-esque game, just with even more expanded visuals on the 3DS. I would give my right nut for that. But what I think is more likely to happen is a sequel, reboot, something to Prime, using the Wii U. I think using the Wii U for that, a first-person shooter, and maybe some augmented reality of holding the Wii U gamepad up to the TV when you needed to scan things or look at information and bring that up like her visor, that could work really, really well. It would be easy to manage your inventory on the Wii U gamepad. It would look even better on there, and I just think that would be awesome. So I would be okay with either one of those scenarios. Give us a 3DS 2D game or an awesome Prime reboot on Wii U.
Yeah, and I think we're probably have a better chance of getting the Prime reboot, just because I feel like Metroid is one of the series or franchises that is more targeted to Western audiences. I don't know how huge Metroid is in Japan.
I think it is with Prime, but I don't think it is with the 2D games. The 2D
Prime
games,
is big in Japan?
No, I mean, Prime is more bigger in the West.
Yeah.
So I agree with you there, but I think the 2D games are much bigger in Japan than they are here because that totally riffs on Castlevania, Mega Man, that style of game. And while those are popular here, they're much more popular in Japan.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know, but the Prime games definitely are a Western thing.
Yeah, they totally are. What I feel like might give us a chance of getting another 2D one is the ridiculous amount of success that Mighty No. 9 found with Kickstarter. And while I do realize that's Mega Man, there are a lot of parallels between Mega Man and 2D Metroid. And also, Azure Striker Gunvolt, to my knowledge at least, has done very well on the 3DS eShop. So maybe that will kind of tip Nintendo off like, hey, people still like these games, and there's barely any of them out there anymore. We could release a great one and dominate that niche market.
Yeah, I would much prefer to see the 2D. But, Nintendo still owns Retro, so if they can pull them away from fucking the next Donkey Kong and put them on a Prime game, I think the idea you were talking about, the scanner with the pad and shit like that, that'd be really fun. I would like to see a game like that. From Metroid, not like, Zombie U or whatever was trying to do shit like that before.
Yeah, most definitely. So yeah, guys, that's Metroid in a nutshell. That's it.
It's Metroid in a morph ball.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. You ready? You want to see like a Metroid movie? Or, oh no, they're doing that Zelda live action. What if they did a Metroid live action?
I think that could work way better than Zelda.
Fuck yeah. As long as they don't have Samus talking.
No, Samus can talk. Just don't let Team Ninja write her fucking dialogue. All they know how to do is make amazing, unrealistic boob physics. Past that, they don't know anything about women.
Right, and I don't want to see stupid boob physics on Samus. That's like seeing my sister with big old titties. Yeah. I don't want it.
Samus is a powerful character, and I don't think you should... It's okay to have a sexual powerful character like Bayonetta. That's not what Samus is. I think when you sexualize Samus, you cheapen her. Even though, yes, she always
that's not
has
who
been,
she was.
She has been to a certain degree with the Zero suit and all that, but that's so minor. That's her look. She's made to be attractive. But everything else about her is strong and independent, and it needs to stay that way. And
right, well, yeah, she's made to be attractive, but that's supposed to be the last thing you notice about her. And it literally is, you know, in the first Metroid, you don't even know she's a woman, and then, you know, if you do well enough, you see her in a bikini, but... Yeah. You know, you're not made to know she's an attractive woman. You're just made to know whoever this is fucking super badass.
For sure.
They totally ripped on Alien. I mean, I'm sure the whole world knew that before I just had that revelation, but I kind of just thought of that again. Like, man, she really reminds me of Ripley. Like, they're just a bunch of people at Nintendo who saw Alien and were, like, really, really inspired.
Yeah, there's definitely some parallels there. But I think that just about does it for our second theme episode and episode 4 overall.
Yep.
So, guys,
it was a good week.
It was. We'll be coming back to you next week talking about what we've been watching, playing, reading, and thinking about. So, until next time, my name's Logan. You can follow me on Twitter at HellDestroyer77 or on YouTube under the same name. And I've been joined by my co-host, Shaun, as always.
And you can find me at Twitter? Solid Juggernaut? At Solid Juggernaut? I don't know. I don't use Twitter anymore. If you see me on there, it's just because I like somebody's YouTube video. But if I start getting messages, I might hop back on.
Yeah, there you go. So, guys, thanks for listening. Leave your comments in any place you might be watching or listening to this that accepts comments. And if you have any ideas for a future theme show, be it a game series you want us to explore, a topic, a trend, etc., we're open to it. If your idea doesn't suck, we just might do it next time. Thanks for listening.